tienes esa cosa especial, bella mariposa especial, ella con su rosa especial, todos quieren ese especial. Tú tienes esa cosa especial, bella mariposa especial, ella con su rosa
Huzzah, I am Monk,
especial.
your host.
Todos
Welcome to
quieren ese
PIDCAST episode 30, the podcast by fans, for fans, and for the people who just really need to vent about the Colorado Rapids. PIDCAST is a part of the Bangarang soccer community, telling soccer stories a mile high in the sky and on till morning. After you're all done pressing pins into your front office voodoo dolls, come touch grass with us at our free-to-play pickup around Denver. Don't forget to check out our sibling show, Summit Up, covering all things Denver Summit FC, NWSL, and women's sports here at 5280. Say hello to my co-host and fantasy queen, Fitouri.
Hey, Monk, welcome back.
And the guy who still does jazzercise on VHS, Matt.
I have to do anything to try to calm the rage inside of me that was spurred on by Sarah's actions, which we will talk about later.
Please hold for our accountability section later on in the pod.
I'll just be here squeezing this soccer stress ball the entire time.
Well, hopefully Pidder Chatter isn't causing you that much stress. What we got going on, Matt?
Oh, there's some cool stuff in Pidder Chatter. Rapids 2 played this weekend. It was a weird weekend because they played in Greeley at, I believe it's Jackson Stadium at the University of Northern Colorado. Going into this match, if they had scored 2 points, they automatically clinched a playoff berth. For those of you that aren't familiar with MLS Next Pro, you can get 2 points via a draw and winning the ensuing penalty shootout. All MLS Next Pro games that end in a draw immediately go into a penalty shootout. There is no extra time, which is just infinitely exciting when you're at one of these games. The Rapids lost 1-0 to Houston Dynamo, Rapids 2 lost 1-0 to Houston Dynamo 2 via an own goal off of Bilo Jop, trying to defend against a set piece in the box. That was in the 12th minute. There were no other goals for the duration of the match, despite Houston 2 going down to 10 men due to a red card. So that eliminated the Rapids' ability to secure their own playoff berth. However, over the course of the rest of the Next Pro matches in the evening, all of the results they needed shook out their way to have already clinched. I believe they have 2 more games in the season before their playoffs start, and they can keep going at full tilt, or they can relax a little bit knowing that their position is secured. In other Rapids winning news, the Rapids Unified team played their final game of the season at Dick's Sporting Goods Park Saturday night after the Rapids game. This game looked to end a 0 until a penalty was awarded at the very end of the game, foul on Houston Dynamo Unified. And the Rapids Unified stepped up to the spot, buried an undeniable penalty kick, and then celebrated a 1-0 victory to cap off an amazing season for the Unified team. I was lucky enough to be around the game way after the Unified game had finished, and the fans, friends, and family that stayed around for the Rapids Unified team to get out of the locker room and such formed a, what do you call those things? Like an arm bridge tunnel? Yeah. And so as the Unified team came out of the locker room, all of the fans were lined up across from each other, arms up like a tunnel. And I got to sit on the ground and film all of the players running through that tunnel just exuberantly. Scotty Stevens, in particular, always knows where the camera is, looked right down, face frame, and shouted, "Let's go." Just perfect moment. I was really happy to capture that. You can see that on our socials. It just goes to show, I think that the same joy would have been had the result not been 1-0, but either way, they are such a fun team, such an amazing group of players, coaches, humans.
Yeah,
Can we implement tunnels in like everything we do?
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely.
saying, just randomly do tunnels and have people like walk through as you cheer them on. Like, I don't know, it just feels like
This was my first time staying for a Unified game, and it was very fun to watch and very fun to cheer on the team. I also thought it was really cool to watch the ways in which the Rapids made sure that it felt like a equally respected match. Like, they made sure they had folks out waving flags when a goal was scored. They had players go, Rapids won players going and giving autographs throughout the game for folks who stayed behind to keep fans like hyped up. So I really enjoyed watching it, and I really encourage folks next time that there's a unified game, stay around and watch.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fans I was talking to after the game was like, I was disappointed. I didn't get to see goalkeeper Colin Underley make a lot of saves. And I was like, that's a good thing. That's a really good, but that just goes to show like how big of a star for that team Colin is, and how amazing his saves can be. In some other non Rapids related news, Denver Summit FC announced that they have hit an NWSL record 15,000 season ticket deposits, which is just wild because I think their temporary stadium is going to hold 12.5 thousand people, and their permanent stadium is only slated to hold 14.5 thousand people. So at 15,000, this is plus 500. So I know some conversions won't become season tickets, but what a feat this is. This is just, I think, a true testament as to what the hunger for women's soccer, and honestly what the soccer culture and hunger can be here in Denver.
Isn't that a record for NWSL?
Yes.
I thought I saw that somewhere.
Yeah. So they've done so well, they've now turned their wait list into a club, because the 5280 club was designed to be their season ticket holder club. And as such, the 15,000 people that put their deposits down are part of that club. But they're like, well, we'll just allow this to be the waitlist club as well. And you guys can still get the 10% discount. You can get a founder's scarf. And then once the deposit to season ticket conversions happen in a few weeks and any spots open up, you get to go down the pecking order on the wait list. So I think the perks are there. We'll see if the value is there. We'll see how much conversion happens, but definitely something to look at if you missed out on those first 15,000 available season ticket deposits. Did you get, I know Allie and I are in two of those. Monk, you said you got your deposit in?
Yep. Got mine.
Yeah, me too.
All right, we'll all be there. And then finally, additional kind of stadium news. The Denver Broncos, as well as Mayor Johnston, Governor Polis, all announced that the Broncos have committed in principle to building their new stadium at Burnham Yards. For those of you unfamiliar with Burnham Yards, this is the area just kind of southeast of Ball Arena, the Broncos' current stadium, and abutted to Lincoln Park and La Alma. The area that the stadium will go is going to be on some low to unused train yards to really kind of revitalize that space. I think this is huge news from a municipal standpoint, in that this mayor has now almost made it his legacy to secure the women's soccer team to be in Denver proper, and now to keep the Denver football team in Denver proper. I believe they are saying for the next 50 years. So I don't know about you guys, but that seems to just leave one more team not in Denver proper. You guys, anybody know who we're talking about here?
We're the
Man.
Commerce City Rapids.
It's true. But we wouldn't know what to do if we had to pay for parking and didn't have prairie dogs to pray to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like we probably wouldn't drive and, create a bigger hole in the ozone layer. But, whatever.
Nobody cares about that. That's fake.
We're not going to live long enough to see that anyway.
It is really confusing to see Kroenke doing all of these major investments in the Denver area, like buying up Elitch Gardens, working on that whole area. You would think adding one more stadium and consolidating your teams to one area, you can have more commerce in that area around game days. Like it really does make me wonder if he's just holding on to sell sometimes.
Well, I mean, Sarah, you'll hear in the interview that Monk and I had with Pádraig a bit later in the episode that I believe that the company line is that KSC, the real estate company, are very forward-looking, long-term investors. We did press Pádraig a little bit about the Rapids' potential for other stadium locations, and he said that the good thing about being a KSC team is that the real estate division of KSC, which is ginormous, does all the real estate scouting for them. So not a real answer, but I do kind of have a dark horse set of Charlie Kelly corkboard conspiracies. My first is that the Kroenke, Walton, Penner, just like money family, like extreme wealth conglomeration of human beings, will use that marital relationship to keep the city's low lease cost use of the location Mile High Stadium currently is by passing that sweetheart deal onto the Rapids. This could be something like they knock down the stadium around Mile High Field and then just build kind of a rectangular urban footprint soccer specific stadium. Also, I think that Kroenke definitely would have known about this machination happening between the Broncos and the city and moving the stadium, and could be positioning the River Mile development that they've been planning, maybe skewing it a bit more westerly into that space where the stadium, the Bronco Stadium, will have been, and parking a soccer specific stadium across the parking lot from his basketball and hockey arena. And then
I
my
hope,
wildest,
though, if they do that, is that they take the screen from Dick's and put it over there, because I don't know what to do if I have all the pixels, right? I really don't. I need to feel like home.
could you imagine just like 50 years from now, there's like nothing left of Dick's Sporting Goods Park except just that screen, and somehow it's still like a light with like the Paxton Aronson own goal highlight, but like only 3 pixels are still firing.
It's like all those former Olympic stadiums that they showed that are really like post-apocalyptic, grown
Yeah.
over. It's like Dick's Sporting Goods Park grown over, and like that weird UC Health sign, like, or Swedish Health, UC Health, just like eerily blinking underneath the scoreboard, and like
Zombieland 3, filmed in Commerce City. I think my favorite, and this is just like a stupid theory, but what if we just cut the roof off of Ball Arena and put a retractable roof and all 3 teams just played at Ball Arena? That would be an efficient move right there.
I'm guessing the floor is not big enough.
No,
for
you gotta
the
get rid of the
soccer
lower
field.
bowl to do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
because
basically have a soccer field, and then like you could put in risers for hockey and basketball, but for soccer it'd just be kind of like a galactic Senate kind of like viewing angle.
I was gonna say, because they've played arena football there, but I think an arena football field is way shorter.
That would mean there's like 6 teams there, though, right? Because they have like a lacrosse
Same.
team that also plays there, and
Is there anything that says KSC more than housing 6 teams and 4 different sports in the same arena?
It's also particularly impressive with basketball because they just have so many games. So scheduling all these other things around that is work.
I'm just imagining like you're buying the 4-pack ticket, like you start off watching like Mammoth lacrosse at 11 a.m. and then at 2 p.m. you've got Rapids versus Salt Lake. At 5 p.m. you've got Avalanche versus the Kraken, and then at 8 p.m. you've got Nuggets versus the Clippers. Like,
and they just have a
one,
giant rotating platform under the ground to rotate those fields. So it's like this carousel underground.
just
Well,
spend the day at Ball Arena.
regardless, I think something coming up here is that, Denver has always been one of those cities that has all of the major men's sports teams. We're obviously adding a women's team, which is very exciting, but it is really bringing questions of urban development and the role of stadiums in urban spaces, how the environmental implications, the cost on taxpayers, the urban design around them, whether you have parking lots or walking access. So I think that like this Bronco Stadium is just bringing it once again to the forefront. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see this move back to city center stadiums and what that looks like in 2025. Because like obviously when they put in Ball Arena, they put in miles of parking around it, right? How is
So
that?
they're tearing down to put in miles of living space or something. I don't know.
Yeah, what was the line, Sarah, from Councilwoman Flora Alvidra? She's like, which is weird because it used to be housed.
Exactly.
They had to get it rezoned to be a neighborhood, even though it initially was a neighborhood.
Well, I
That's
think
all. That's all. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've hit Pidder Chatter pretty well here. Should we move on to our recap of this past game?
Yeah, let's move on to another sprawling example of urban development, Houston. Like they're consistently voted like the worst road infrastructure in the United States.
Which is saying something because have you driven through the Springs?
Welcome to our section of Texas hatred, or the next two sections of Texas hatred. The first being Houston recap. The Rapids played the Houston Dynamo this past Saturday, September 13th at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Rapids took an early lead. We had a 10-minute goal from Cole Bassett off of a free kick, and then the Rapids spent the most of the game in the lead with 1-0 until Houston was able to equalize in the 68th minute. We ended up with a really lovely evening of what everyone I think thought was going to be a 1-1 draw. In the 90th plus 6, the Rapids scored a goal. Officially, it looks like that goal is being credited to Paxton Aronson, making it his first goal with a header off of a corner kick, although I am sure we will get into more whether that was correctly attributed to Paxton Aronson in a minute. So Rapids walk away with 3 points after a home win against Houston.
I like how you said a lovely evening of a 1-1 draw. I really question what happens in your mind when a draw occurs. Like, I just imagine like the Fantasia cartoons or like, you're like, oh, draw.
And not even like high scoring draws. She's always like 1-1 or 2-2. She's like, such an exciting game.
Yeah, what was that episode? She's like, I'm going to predict a really fun draw.
I want to clarify what I said. We had a lovely ending after what we thought was going to be a 1-1 draw when we ended up with a 2-1 win.
Yeah, we only half listened to her anyway.
I mean, it wasn't lovely though, because like, I don't know what you bougie people were doing over in 108, but I went down to 117 for the second half, and I was with Omar and Carly and Axel, and we when Houston equalized, that was basically playoffs were not happening anymore. Like that goal was gonna be the one that took us out of the playoffs, and we were gonna spend the long off season wondering what could have been.
We were having a blast heckling.
Do they bring you your martinis in 108, or do you have to still go up and get them?
They actually have a guy that walks around with martinis just in and a little bit of cognac if you really want that.
Fans are probably familiar that there are actually 2 supporters sections, well, 3 supporters sections, the South End, which has 117 and 118, but you can also buy tickets through Centennial 38 in section 108. That's where Monk has his season tickets. Usually we drag him into the young kids spot over in 117, 118, but this game I went and hung out with Monk in 108 and his family's tickets, and y'all, I am convinced 108 is an entire vibe. They have their own traditions, their own chants. Everyone knows each other and chats with the people around them. It was very fun. If you're ever feeling like you're ready to sit down and watch a game with a good view, you can still do so from a supporter section in 108.
Did you bring your own padded seat as well, Sarah, or did someone provide?
Are you kidding? They're built with pads. They're actually couches. If you ever walked over to see us, we just have like.
Do they have like the motorized recliner like at Alamo?
Yeah, and the massage chair. And I actually got a pedicure while I was sitting there.
Yeah, well, let's start by talking about this Paxton Aronson goal or not goal. It looked like, I don't know about you all, I haven't seen a clean view that shows who made contact on the ball. For listeners, it was a corner kick. Multiple players were making plays on the ball. Somewhere between either Paxton and a Houston player, they got a piece of it and it went into the goal. But I'm not sure whether it's not the clean score I would want out of Paxton's first goal.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a couple angles that looked like it was more of an own goal, but I still feel like he got like a touch on it and then like it went like. But yeah, I could see the argument for an own goal. I'd rather him have a nice, pretty goal. We'll see plenty more, I'm sure, from him. But
it is officially an own goal, despite what it says on FOTMob. and maybe what it says in the commentary on MLS. If you look through the stats, it is officially credited as an own goal to Andrade, the Houston 2 product that had been elevated to Houston Dynamo. When you look at the recaps, you see it hits Paxton kind of at the back of his left shoulder, comes off at a weird angle, which then hits like the solar plexus of Andrade, the Houston defender, and sneaks it into the back post. There are arguments that if Paxton doesn't touch it, it gets through to Maxu or Holding. I know Holding would have loved that. But I think what we can agree is the ball went in the net and Paxton thought he scored it and the entire stadium thought he scored it. And until anyone got home and got corrected, that's what they're going to take away from it. They're going to remember that Paxton Aronson touched the ball in the 96th minute and then peeled off his shirt, jumped over the signboard, and ran to, I asked this afterwards, he ran to random people in the crowd and just jumped in with them. In the postgame, I said, Paxton, who did you run so directly to after that goal? Was it your family? Did you know them? He goes, nope. I was just so excited. Just so excited. And whether MLS wants to say it's his goal or not, I think that is the defining start of the Paxton Aronson era. I can't make that one work.
You tried really hard, though.
Yeah.
Aronson.
Yeah.
This is a team that looked good, especially coming off of 2 losses that arguably should have won. And to come back and kind of rebound here, I think is very important. And if we can keep like a little bit of some winning momentum going into the playoffs, that's going to be vital to us, I think, just from an energy standpoint, not from a placement standpoint. But just they looked good. We also kind of broke the curse of the factor we had a 58% possession. Like usually if we possess the ball, we don't know how to shoot or something. So we actually broke that, and it was a great game to be at. Great atmosphere, and they looked good, and hopefully that we continue to see that. And Cole's goal as well. Watching him score, we need him really to step up, especially if we're gonna make that run in the playoffs. Like a lot's gonna fall on that guy's shoulders.
We should get to the Cole goal in a second, but I'm still not done with the Paxton Aronson goal because I don't think I've seen someone go to the fans that hyped about something on the field from the Rapids since our once and future king, Moise Bombito.
Well,
Paxton was absolutely like every cell in his body was electrified, and his only instinct was to go to the fans. And that reminded me of one person, Moise Bombito.
I agree. I think it wasn't just the fact that he had in his mind scored his first goal, but it was at 90 plus 6 to get 3 points. Like you had said, 3 points that were the big difference. Could have been a big difference here when we're talking about playoff contentions. So I think what I saw, especially out of him subbing in Kansas City, was like he sees himself as a difference maker on this team. He goes and he puts his heart into it, and he thinks he can change the course of a game. And like, frankly, with a player we paid that much for, a player in that 10 spot, you want them to be a difference maker. I think in that moment, he was like, yes, this was the change maker I am trying to be. I changed the course of this game. I changed the outcome. I got us the result. And I think that was caught up in that celebration, not just that it was a first goal.
That's a great point, Sarah, because a lot in the Paxton Aronson signing was made about him choosing the Rapids so that he wouldn't just be a guy on a team, but that he was going to a team to be the guy. And like, he was the guy.
Absolutely. Well, do you want to move to, let's chat with the Cole goal real quick.
I think the swaggiest goal I've seen in a long time. Hafa Santos is just holding his head like, I wonder what I should watch on Netflix. And then just casually back heels it away from the wall to put the ball in play. And Cole just comes up from behind him and buries it without a doubt. The wall was caught looking, the John Bond, Rob Holding's bestie, was just like, what happened?
Yeah, it was good. And it's fun to see Cole back on the scoreboard. I think he's been itching for it for a minute.
That cheeky stuff. Now that's 2 goals a season that were very cheeky we've had out of our players between Cole and Navajo. That one was like, sometimes you just take those kind of cheeky goals, or even like strategized goals like this one. That's sometimes what you got to do to get those wins, get those points. And it also shows a lot of not only faith, but just knowledge from Chris, right? Armis coming up with those strategies and going, okay, let's do this instead of just trying to do a straight shot. That's a coach's call there in most instances, or at least something that he designed and played off of. So you got to give credit where credit's due to our man Armis.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's something they saw the Philadelphia Union pull off in a match, and then brought the film into Sharpie in the set piece room and decided to put it in the playbook and pull it out tonight. I think the really interesting part was Cole later in the game took a free kick, and in the post game, Cole told us that there was a little bit of a language barrier, a little bit of confusion, because Rafa Santos thought Cole was going to return the favor and just backheel the ball to Rafa Santos to shoot. Instead, Cole took the direct free kick. So Santos was a little like, come on, man, you owe me that one. But yeah.
I think, Monk, something you brought up is, I think that is worth saying, is that that Chris Armis is still sitting without a contract for this coming year, if I'm correct. And so obviously this game was a big win. Getting the playoffs is a big win, but it is interesting for us to be in flux and unclear on whether he's going to continue with the team. And I think like a big part of that to me is that like the players seem to love him. We seem to see really great moments out of him. And I think that at least I would love to see him continue with this team. So I'm curious to see when we'll see that contract.
Yeah, I've been generally nothing but impressed with him. As a person, if you sit down and talk with him, he just lights up the room. Like, he makes you want to play hard. He makes you want to believe in what he's saying. And that is absolutely amazing. But I'm going to use it for an opportunity to talk about another person who has that same ability, and that same ability to just like make you want to believe when you sit down and talk with him, because Matt and I got to have a great conversation with Pádraig Smith. Matt, you want to kind of intro us a little bit about what you kind of went into with this interview? Because you did a lot of work to get us this one. So
I don't know about that. I think this all stems back to when the Djordje Mihailovic news leaked. I reached directly to Pádraig, basically to say, like, Pádraig, this is going to be bad for the fan base and the culture for the duration of the season. Come on the show. Let's talk about this. Let's get ahead of it. Like, you're charismatic. You have the information. I know. I still think back to, I think it was the 23 season. I was talking to Pádraig at the Celtic, and he was able to make me believe despite feeling pretty down on that. And so we asked him to go on record, and he granted us this interview. Before he granted us this interview, he did invite me to his office, and I sat with him for 2.5 hours, and we talked about everything Rapids. So while we didn't know that the Paxton Aronson move was going to be the move, he reassured me that there were moves being readied, and that they weren't, while they were caught off guard by Djordje's desire to go to Toronto, they weren't caught off guard with a lack of targets to replace him. The fact that they were able to get that target in 2 weeks in this window is something we talk about in the interview. But it goes to show, I think, the Rapids comms and Pádraig himself making more good faith efforts to engage with the community. You saw that fan forum that they had with the fans at Odell's Brewing. They're having another one this off season. I think the more we keep inviting them to the table, the more they take us up on that, the better the relationship's going to be. And from everything I've seen, Monk, I mean, you were there for this. I think that's the intention from all involved. We are joined here today by Rapids President Pádraig Smith. Pádraig, I do want to thank you for your time. Before we get into the interview, I do want to make a bit of a disclaimer. To your credit, that when the Djordje Mihailovic move leaked, I reached out to you directly and asked for your time to help us shape the coverage of what could have been a potentially negative situation in the fan base. And you graciously had me into your office for 2.5 hours after training one day, kind of ran me through the preparedness with which the organization had, even when being caught with an unexpected move like that. And I think to that end, we were able to create a much more measured and positive take on what happened, why it happened, and probably what would happen after that. You then committed to doing an interview on the podcast, and you followed through. And so just to make sure we're giving you your due diligence, I wanted to get that out there. I will say, because of the openness with which you've approached us, we are not going to show the hour video we took of you trying to do the bicycle kick for Marcelo Balboa's night. And in return, Gabby's not going to make us wear a lie detector. We can all agree on that?
There you go. Okay. That sounds like a good deal. All right.
So some of these questions are sourced directly from the fan base, and we will give the caveat that may not be the most fairly framed questions, but there's something that we wanted to kind of get out into the general media sphere to kind of honestly get them off the docket. We really believe that the playoffs are a given for the Rapids here in 4 games, and we want to take our coverage and the entire ethos of the team into the playoffs and to 2026 with kind of the freshest decks on the boat we can. So, Austin, do you have anything else to report before we start?
No, just glad to be back to talking with him. Love talking with Borg. He's an amazing conversationalist. If you ever get a chance to sit down with him as more fans, he's absolutely awesome just to have a beer with. So well worth the conversation. But let's start with.
Well, let me first of all say, like, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I think, Austin, you're right. Like, you and I have done these podcasts going back a long time. I think there's a photo of the two of us out at the pre-game tailgate from, I think, 16 or 15 or something like that. So that goes back a long time.
I think that was actually your first interview when you landed.
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been. It was very, very early on. I know we've done stuff in the Celtic and things like that as well. Like, and Matt, it was great. Like, having that conversation was really, really good. And I think it's interesting because I think when you kind of have things inside, there's almost this expectation that, well, of course everybody knows that, but that's not the way it is. So I think having the opportunity to jump on something like this and chat directly to our supporters is big. It's a great opportunity for us, and I'm really grateful that you both have me on, and very grateful that you're not showing any video of me attempting bicycle kicks these days, because that would not be a good sight for anybody to see.
We are going to show Matt him trying to do it, though.
Excellent.
We have that covered.
That sounds good.
Let's start with some conversation outside of your job, and in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I think after 11 years here, I think most people know who I am at this point in time. I've been very fortunate to work for this club now this is my 11th season. Came over here from Switzerland. I was with UEFA before this, and then prior to that with the Football Association of Ireland. So that was my first kind of move into soccer or into football back then, back in 2007 at that point in time. And a lot of my career has been focused on the kind of team strategies, how you go about building a club and how you put a club in the best position to be a long-term viable product. And I think it's been super exciting for me, and I'm incredibly grateful and fortuitous to have the career that I've had. You know, when I look at the opportunities I had in Ireland to really learn how clubs that were struggling at the time, you know, Irish clubs were really chasing Champions League and Europa League qualification, which would have led to money, which would have led to more investment. And it was a really difficult cycle because teams would almost get there, but not quite. And having overspent with the expectation of getting this prize money, they would enter financial difficulties. But you still saw some really smart, hardworking people, you know, do some innovative things to keep their clubs going. UEFA was that, you know, times 10, right? Because I had the opportunity to go and spend a lot of time at clubs like Man City, at Red Bull Salzburg, was at Real Madrid, was at Juventus, was at some of the biggest clubs in the world, and seeing how they operated from the inside was just fascinating. At the same time, I was also going to some of the smaller clubs, you know, and smaller associations around Europe, and getting an insight into what they do. And quite often the problems were actually quite similar. It was just the number of zeros at the end that was the kind of difference. But again, you saw a lot of innovation, a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of hardworking people, and a couple of things kept coming back to me. The first was my first mentor in sports, talking about how we're after the hearts and minds of the kids, you know, and that was obviously coming from a national association perspective, but that stuck with me. Helen Raftery was the lady's name. She was our director of strategy. And that really stuck with me throughout my career, that ultimately everything we do is built for that next generation of fans. And I think that applies over here more so than in Europe even, because we're building this, right? We're 30 years into it, but it is still in its infancy when you compare it to the global sport. And then I think when you looked at some of the other clubs, it was the community aspect. It was how they were a representation of their community. And that, I think, is probably more prevalent in Europe because it is the dominant sport and the community really can coalesce around the club. But those two things, I think, were really front and center in my mind, along with this idea that there was waste. You know, the teams aren't always the most efficient, and you see decisions made within the sporting environment that would never be done on a kind of an outsider in another industry, and that always kind of baffled me, like how that would happen. So when the opportunity came, Tim Hinchy invited me to come over. I had met him while I was at the FAI, and he was at Derby County, but he gave me the opportunity to come over and to think about moving full time, and it was, you know, just a great chance for me. I'd always wanted to live in the US. I'd always wanted to work at a club and put into practice what I had learned and what I had seen in Ireland and in Europe, and had been over in the US quite a bit. My dad had run an organization or a company that had a plant in upstate New York, so really wanted to be here. And I think having the chance to come over without knowing much about Denver, but I landed in June, I was just blown away. I mean, it's hard not to like this place when the sun is shining, as it is most of the time, and just fell in love with it. And as I said, I think I've said to you, both of you before, I mean, it was meant to be a 3-year stint where I kind of looked a little bit more at how things were commercialized and how you monetize over here, which is something that American teams are much better at than European teams. There was just, you know, no reason to go back at that once I got here. I mean, working with an incredible bunch of people for an incredible owner and organization, and, you know, to have the opportunity to be part of growing this sport here was huge. So I guess that's kind of how I found myself here from a career perspective, and yeah, love it. This is, you know, from a personal perspective, just the best place to be. My wife's from Colorado. I have a young daughter who was born here, so this very much feels like home. I live 2 minutes from Red Rocks. I love live music, so I mean, there's definitely there's a lot to like about this. So yeah, thrilled to be here.
Wait, so you're not one of the people that moved near Red Rocks and then complained about the noise curfew?
No, I was well aware of what I was moving to, and I can tell you it takes me 11 minutes to get from the very top back to my front door. Post concert, there's a concert next week I'm going to, so I'm very pleased with it. It all works out very nicely. Yeah, it's good.
Or you got to spill what concert?
Pulp. Yeah. So 1990s. Indie pop is pretty much it. Indie rock, alt rock. But yeah, Pulp, if anyone hasn't heard their album Different Class, they should get on it. It's literally different class.
At this point, Pulp has not paid us for this interview yet.
So get kind of, I guess, more into a little soccer. Since the birth of your daughter, you may now have fallen in the pecking order in the Smith household. But here, are you the buck stop here guy? When it comes to the Rapids, it's you. Top of the table, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's not really the way we look at things here, but sure, if you want to say I'm the president of the club, so I've got to take responsibility for things, but it's not the way we really operate as an organization. You know, we're fortunate that we've got access outside of the club to an incredible amount of expertise in the sports environment. Obviously, having Kevin Demoff as our new president of teams and media operations is just an incredible resource. Like, and to be able to tap into everything he's done in the NFL and now with such a wider remit is great. The folks at the Avs, the Nuggets, the Mammoth, the Rams, Arsenal, we've been able to lean into them all on various different topics. And then within the club, I think we've built out, you know, a really robust and strong front office. The same down in the locker room. I think we're in a good spot. So it's not a situation where you have, you know, one person making just a decision and that's it, and everyone has to go with that. Things are much more planned and thoughtfully laid out. And again, I've always said that I feel like it's my role here at the club to bring in the best talent we can, both on and off the field, and then put those people in a position to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and ultimately to advocate for them and to support them, and then bring that all together and make sure that we've got, you know, we're smart and consistent in our decision making. And it's something we talk about a lot, that if you go out there with the intent to make smart decisions over and over and over again, you're going to get to a good spot. If you want to just hit home runs or strike out, it's a bit tougher. Like, so we don't approach it as like just one person's got to, oh, this is the way I think it should go. That's not it. It's obviously laid out from a strategic perspective with a plan, with the understanding that you are going to have to course correct. You're going to have to move it. But I think what you're probably asking is who's to blame when things go wrong. Like, so I'll put my hands up for that. There's no problem with that. Like, the role and the title comes with a level of responsibility that you have to take for good and bad. But what I'm proudest of is ultimately the group that we've built here and the team that we've built and the people that I'm fortunate enough to work with day in and day out. And I think that's what puts us in a position to be competitive.
Well, I think we're fully going to blame you for this Paxton Aronson signing, because that just seems way off the mark so far.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, again, that's a perfect example of the team working really, really well together and our ability to, in a very short period of time, like, because Paxton was under pressure. Like, this was a kid with a lot of options, a lot of choices, from staying in Germany at one of the biggest clubs in Germany now, one of the top clubs in Germany at Eintracht Frankfurt, to going to a perennial, champion in Austria, to going into multiple clubs in the championship. He had a lot of options in front of him. And again, this isn't about any one person. Like, this is about a team that got together and made a couple of quick decisions, right? Ultimately examined whether or not we felt he was going to be a good fit. I'm not going to lie, it doesn't take a lot of time to work out that Paxton Aronson's going to be a good fit. I think most clubs could come to that conclusion pretty quickly. But he was obviously a very, very good fit for our style of play and for our game model and for what we want to do. But then it was a case of, well, okay, how do we go about convincing him to join? Ultimately, how do we go about recruiting him? And, you talk about Alex Aldridge starts to prepare the presentation that we're going to make. You talk about Fran and Karts and Brian Crookham getting together. Okay, exactly what does this need to look like? You think about, Chris Armas and his coaching staff. Okay, exactly how will he fit into our style of play? You start talking to him. You start talking to his representatives. You start looking at some of his games and where he actually performs best on the field. Because even though he is, 10 for 10, obviously was the jersey swap, that initiative that Haley drove, but with, again, other people around her supporting that. But he's not identical to Georgie either. Like, he's not the exact same type of player. So you do require an understanding of how he's going to fit into your structure and into your system. And all of that happened very quickly. On this one, I was the one who led the negotiations. Obviously, when you get to that level, I think that was important. But there'll be other times where Fran will do that. So these are things that we're all doing, or Brian will do it, whether, second team player, whatever it is. So we have the capability to do this and do this quickly. And I think that was really important in the case of Paxton. I was able to deal with his agent and deal with Frankfurt. The guys were able to pull together, a really compelling pitch for him that ultimately he chose to give the thumbs up to, and we're pretty excited about that. Like, I think he's going to be a good player for a long time for us.
Was there ever a thought to wait until next season to make that big signing? Or as soon as Georgie was like, hey, I'm going to move on, you're just like, nope, we're going to find somebody, we're going to go make that playoff run this year? Yeah,
it's a great question, Austin. I think ultimately, Matt, you and I talked about this in the room. Like, our first instinct on that, our first instinct when Georgie came to us was, you're making a mistake, and I talked to him about that. But once it became clear he'd made his mind up, it was like, okay, we have two things to do here. The first is we have to go and maximize the return. Like, has to be a club record, end of story, and that's it. And we're going to hold out for that. And we were very clear with him about that this may not work for him the way he ultimately wanted. And the second thing then was to, devise the exact strategy for how we wanted to move forward. And that could have different pieces to it. So the initial thought wasn't necessarily just a 1-for-1. That wasn't it, because that's hard. Replacing a player of Georgie's caliber with whatever it was, a couple of weeks left in the window, that's not an easy task. But we did have a list of players, both inside and outside the league, that we liked in that position. So we kind of had those initial conversations. A couple of guys inside the league that we really liked. One in particular that we felt would have been a like for like and would have been quite a big acquisition. And then there were a couple of others where we felt like it might be 2-for-1, or I think I told you 2.5, because we did have some remaining budget for another position as well, and we were going to allocate it out in that fashion. What happened then with Paxton? I mean, ultimately Paxton came to us. I was talking to his agent about something else, and he mentioned Paxton, and was that someone that we had on our radar? And we're like, yes, it is. Is this real? Like, is this a possibility? And once he said yes, then it was okay. Let's go full on here. We kept other conversations open at the time, because again, with his options and with Eintracht Frankfurt's position, there was no guarantee you were going to get that done. But we obviously moved down that pathway to try and get there. And then it became clearer that, this was something that was possible. We had to have, really good conversations with Kevin and with ownership around what it was going to take, because it's a substantially bigger package ultimately overall than Georgie's package. It's longer in years, it's more money, etc. So it's a massive investment for the club. But again, we had prepared and we were ready for those conversations. What was great was the conversations were so quick with ownership, where it was like, look, this is what we want to do. Quick conversation around it. Again, Kevin's really dialed in. He understands the league. He knows the league and he knows these players. And it was quick, like, yeah, this is a swing we want to take here. Like, this is something we want to do. And we feel like it's going to put us in a good position, both to finish this season strong, but then also to build for the future as well, and to have a real, key foundational piece in the roster for time to come. And I think at the fan forum, I was asked, how do you go about, or what do you think when you've got a really talented player who doesn't want to be here? And the simple thing is to find a better player who does want to be here. And I think having the opportunity to do that was something we were really excited about. And I think Paxton's shown already, what he's going to bring to the table. He's a super talented kid.
Well, for a moment, I want to draw the satellite back for a more global view. You have responsibilities or have earned positions on committees league-wide, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I serve as one of the co-chairs for the Chief Soccer Officers Committee, alongside John Thorrington from LAFC and Mike Jacobs from Nashville. So the three of us are on that. That means we get invited as well to the owners subco, which is the sporting and competition subco. So we get invited to that, and at times get asked for our opinion or the position of the chief soccer officers in general. And then I sit on an executive council as well, which is 3 CSOs and 3 CBOs across the league, that I guess acts as an advisory group to the league office on some of the matters that they're dealing with. So yeah, it's a lot of meetings.
Are you at liberty to say who the 3 CSOs and 3 CBOs are?
I don't. It's myself, John, and Mike on the CSO side. The CBOs, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say it or not, to be honest with you. So it's a great. I literally finished up a virtual meeting right before jumping on this. So it's a great committee. Some really interesting topics that get discussed, and it's just a wonderful way to see some of the insights or hear some of the insights from other colleagues around the league. So it's really good.
Asking about the local market, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think the Rapids and KSE bear a level of culpability as a de facto top of Colorado soccer pyramid, right? We're the professional team at the top professional level in Colorado. Why was Denver passed over for World Cup hosting duties, and how do we assure that the women do come here in 6 years?
Why we were passed over, I think you'd have to ask FIFA about that. Ultimately, it's their decision. I think it was the wrong decision, to be quite honest with you. I think Denver and Colorado is perfectly positioned to be an incredible host. I think we've seen that. We've seen what this city and what this state is capable of, and I think we've shown that there is a demand for top level soccer here as well, and that's something that I think the supporters of the sport around the state would have they would have come in their droves to those games. They really would, and I think it would have been an incredible summer. It still can be. I think that's part and parcel of it. Just because we're not hosting games doesn't mean we can't play a big part in the World Cup and in the summer of soccer that's to come next year. And I think over the next few months, you're going to hear a lot more about what our plans are for next year and what we're going to do. There's some really exciting initiatives going on there. And I know we're going to host a fan forum as well in the off season, where I'm going to be joined by Kevin and Haley to kind of go into some of those things in much more detail. But it's going to be really exciting no matter what. And I think some of the plans that we've got will allow us to ultimately capture the attention of the audience, but keep that attention, right? Because there's never going to be as many eyeballs on our sport as there will be next summer. So how we actually make sure that we turn that into a legacy is the key part of this. And I think some of the programming we've got going, Caitlin Kinzer's heading it up on our side. It's going to be really, really exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I think when you combine that with it being our 30th anniversary as well, 2026 is it's set up to be an incredible year for us.
Keeping at the league level, how do you and your fellow CSOs view the state of MLS? World Cup coming next year. Similarly, how do you and your fellow CSOs envision maximizing that? So kind of following up on the question a little bit.
Look, I think MLS is in an incredibly strong position right now. I think there's a lot more to come, obviously. I mentioned earlier that even though we're 30 years in, we are still in our infancy relative to more or relative to leagues around the globe. But I think you can see how quickly MLS has grown. You can see how much better it is. Even in the 10 years or 11 years since I first got here, I mean, the quality of play has just gone through the roof. And that's something that has not gone unnoticed around the world. And, you know, you can point to some of the achievements that we've had. Inter Miami beating Porto in the Club World Cup. That's a big time. That's a big milestone. You know, it's a big moment for our sport. You can see there's more eyeballs on the sport. You can see there's younger players that are coming over here and seeing this as a real step forward in their career, and also seeing it as a real destination where they can come and play for a long period of time, not just a stepping stone league into something bigger in Europe. But that also still exists, and that's a good thing, and we shouldn't shy away from that. And certainly we talk to young players about that all the time. Like at the end of the day, if we can move a player into a Champions League club like Nice, that's good. That's good for the development of the league. It's good for the reputation of the league. It's good for the economics of the league. So I think these are all interesting things. So I think there's a real belief, pardon me, that this league is in a good spot, but still nowhere near where it can ultimately get to. And I think it's on all of us to play our part in that and to think about that. And again, we talk about this is a long-term play. And again, I know, excuse me, for so many people, obviously the only thing that matters is the results, right? But at the end of the day, when you're trying to grow a club, build a club, grow a league, then you have to take a long-term perspective. It's unfortunately foolish not to. And ultimately, I've seen in my roles at UEFA and in Ireland the negative outcomes that come with short-term thinking. And when that is the only focus, it's really hard to succeed. And that's difficult. And I think it's why something like this is so good, that we can maybe explain that a little bit more. But it's a really difficult balance, because obviously we want to win at the weekend, fans want to win at the weekend, but there is still that understanding that to really move this sport to where it needs to get to in this country, that is going to take time. The talent is there. You see how good some of these young players are in the academy structures, and even outside of that, you look in the college game. You know, it's one of the reasons we're still focused on the draft. You've had Moise Bombito, you've had Patrick Ajimang, and you've had Oluwaseyi from Minnesota all move over for $8 million plus. It's a big deal. There's still a lot of talent there. So I think as we look around, we all know, all CSOs know, the future is incredibly bright in this country.
All right. Drawing back to the women and in kind of a two-parter, the hottest topic going into 2025 was where the women's team was going to set down roots to play. They've since announced Santa Fe Yards in Denver. A lot of the fan base took that opportunity to wonder why such a seemingly geographic and also municipal budget compromise of a men's and women's team sharing a stadium did not happen. And this is, I'd like to add that Jen Millay, we've spoken to her, and I've spoken to you about this. Both of you have spoken glowingly about the other, and particularly Jen, with how helpful not only you personally, but the Rapids organization has been to Denver Summit FC so far.
Yeah, I mean, we want to do everything we can to support them. I'm it's great to see them. I'm thrilled as the dad to a young daughter, I'm excited to see the professional women's game represented here in Colorado, and I think it's going to be wonderful. I think you can see the talent that we produce already. So I think having young Coloradan girls grow up being able to aspire and being able to dream of playing for their hometown club is just fantastic. It really is great. So super excited about that, and very much looking forward to them kicking things off next year. I think when it comes to the stadium, I think from their perspective, and you'd have to ask Jen more about this, but I think it's pretty clear that NWSL as a league has their own priorities on how they want their teams to structure their infrastructure and how they want to set up from a stadium perspective, and having them be the main players there. So I'm sure that played a part for them, for the NWSL group. From our perspective, I think you can see that as a group, KSE operates very consistently from that regard. We have our owned and operated venues, and those venues, you know, work in tandem with our real estate development as well. And that's a strategy that has worked very, very well for KSE right the way across the country and across the globe when you look at Arsenal as well. So from that perspective, I think it made sense where we were at the moment, and we continue to evaluate like options that are open to us. But you know, that's something that's quite clear. Owning and operating our own venue is a key part of our overall strategy.
Well, speaking of those options that are open to you, we did want to bring up the point we often hear about Dick's Sporting Goods Park needing massive renovations, or that the stadium should be downtown and accessible. I will point out my non-sport attending family has come to a few games this season, and they were quite enamored with Dick's Sporting Goods Park. So I think there's a certain saltiness that maybe the people that are here every week are starting to look at things through. But how do you, as the president and as an organization, balance the idea of renovating a stadium to keep up with both the times and also reflexive to what some of the other teams are doing? And then when, say, something like the Broncos location at Mile High is going to become available soon, how do you look at that lens as a potential location for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I'm not surprised your non-soccer family enjoyed it. This is a great place to watch a game. You know, it really is a good place to watch a game, and I think it's far more accessible than people think. You know, that's something that's always baffled me. Obviously, I've traveled to every away stadium in the country, and it's, you know, there's far more difficult venues to get to than this one. And I think you can come out here and have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful evening watching good soccer and playing it. I think, again, I'm going to go back to, this is one of the great things about working for an organization of our size and scale. You asked me as president, how do I look at some of the real estate things? Quite often that's done through our real estate division, right? That's not my area of expertise, but we're very fortunate that we have a lot of people for whom that is their expertise, and they are very, very good at it. And I think one of the things that you've seen, and that you will I'm sure have noticed about you know, our organization and from an overarching standpoint, is that they're long-term investors. You know, they're long-term investors who are willing to be patient in what they do to make sure that what they do is right and that it makes the most sense. And I think we'll continue to evaluate all the options that are open to us. Again, I'm glad I'm not the one that's having to pinpoint what it means specifically from an economic perspective, that we can rely on the industry experts that we have in that area to say, hey, this makes the most sense when it comes to investment. What we do is we focus on what we need here to make sure that we can put a competitive team on the field, and that most importantly, we can provide our supporters and our fans with an incredible fan experience. And I think what we've said in that regard is that where it is right now isn't good enough. Like, that's something that we're very clear about. It's not good enough, and we know that. And I think we're going to great lengths right now to try and figure out exactly what our fans want and exactly what the market wants. And I think that's a really important piece of this. And I think, you know, hopefully a lot of our fans are going to be involved in this as well. And we're going to take that feedback. And I think when we get to the fan forum in the off season, there'll hopefully be some more concrete kind of answers that we can give on some of the plans that we've got. You will see changes. You will see changes next year. That will happen. I'm going to let Hayley and kind of Kevin talk to that in a little bit more detail when we get there. But I think the important part here is to make sure that we listen now, to make sure that we listen and that we understand what our fans and what the market wants, and that we can then go and execute against that to make sure that we do provide a fan experience that is at the level that we want and that we obviously know our supporters want as well.
So for those of you listening at home, he has not ruled out Rapids returning to Federal Boulevard in 2032. Marcelo Bobo has agreed to stand on Federal.
He's going to do an overhead
sign.
kick there as well. Yeah.
So kind of following up on what fans want, right? The Rapids have been known as not big spenders, kind of distressed assets. When you were first brought in, a lot of people talked about kind of a Moneyball mentality. And then you signed Aronson for a huge sum of money, quick turnaround, kind of making them all eat humble pie. So how does that now fit into our new kind of game model? Now that you're getting a little bit more money given to you to kind of spend, it feels like there's a little bit less reins on that. From a fan perspective, I don't know what it's like for you with the organization, but that's just what it kind of feels like, is you're getting a little bit more freedom. So how does that go?
I think it's interesting that you use the word Moneyball, because I think that's something that gets thrown around a lot, and I'm not sure there's a common definition for it at this point in time, or an understanding of exactly what it is. My interpretation of it has always been that, you look for value in any market. Like, that's what you're ultimately looking to do. I think I said early on that from my time in Europe, you could see there was waste, and I think that applies over here as well. You don't have to look too far to see teams that have spent, massive amounts of money, and it hasn't correlated to success on the field. And I think that's something that we don't want to do. Like, I don't see any point in that. Like, I'm a big believer, again, that if we want to grow this league and make this a top league in the world, then we can't be frivolous in terms of what we do, and we have to be viable as a financial operation. Like, so to do that, you've got to take a pretty strategic approach to how you go about operating as a club, and also by extension to your roster build as well. But Moneyball doesn't necessarily mean just not spending. It just means being smart with how you're spending and seeking that value in the market. We may have decided that taking the Mihailovic transfer fee and spreading that across a number of players was the right approach. In this instance, where somebody like Paxton becomes available, you reevaluate that, and you look at that in terms of what value that's going to bring to the club, and we feel like that's going to bring tremendous value to the club, and that ultimately will help us on and off the field. So I think, I wouldn't say that signing Paxton was some show of a completely different approach. It's still the same. Like, is this a smart decision when it comes to our roster build? Is this in line with who we are as a club? And we talk a lot about controlled aggression, right? We want to be the protagonist in all phases of the game. So in possession, we want to be aggressive, trying to break lines and play vertical football. Against the ball, we want to have defensive solidity and defensive structure. But then when the opportunity presents itself, when there's a pressing trigger, we want to be aggressive in our intent to go and turn the ball over. And the same on set pieces and transition. We want to be incredibly aggressive to own those moments and seize those opportunities to ultimately put ourselves in a position to win games. So when you're looking at someone like Paxton, you're like, well, how does he fit into that? And you're ticking a lot of boxes very, very quickly with someone like Paxton. So it becomes a pretty easy decision, I would say, to move forward with someone like him. But we do weigh that against what does it mean for the rest of our roster build. I think fans may not be as aware of the different models and the differences between the different models that are now available in MLS. So you've got the 3DP plus 3U22 initiative model, right? So the 3+3, and then you've got what we would call a 2-4-2, which is 2 DPs, 4 U22 initiative players, but crucially the ability to buy $2 million in GAM. That's a really important component of this, because GAM ultimately is money credited to us that can be used across a number of different playing assets, right? It's not limited as cash is to DPs or to U22. So it's a way of using cash in a much more efficient and effective way. And that's the model that we look to move to. And again, we've got ownership who's supporting us and backing us in that, and we're going to buy $2 million extra in GAM next year to put ourselves in a really strong position to go and build a roster that we think is capable of doing the things that we want to do, which is ultimately, qualifying for the playoffs and putting ourselves in a position to win consistently and bring a trophy back here.
Recently, Chris made some comments on radio that got construed negatively.
Which Chris? We've got
Chris
Armas, Little, Sharpie, Cartilage.
About the
We've got nothing
decision-making
but
process.
Chris's here.
Yeah, so many Chris's.
Yeah.
about the decision-making process. And I think both you and Chris have definitely quelled the aspect of that. But I did want to ask you philosophically how you believe the coach and sporting departments synergy works best, and are there examples of kind of a more coach as GM or a more coach as the arbiter of the game model that you think are best practices?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's this is the way, this is the right way. That's not something that I believe in. So I think every club has to, build out what it feels is in their best interest and best suits their strategy and their approach. For me, I'm clear. If anyone puts up their hand and says, I've got all the answers, you need to avoid that at all costs. That's not something I believe in at all. And again, when I look at what we've built here, it's what I'm probably proudest of, is that we've got, a really good group of talented, hardworking, ambitious people that all play a key role in our decision-making process. And Chris has obviously been a key part of that. And again, I'm a big believer that as a front office, you should never bring in a player that the coach doesn't want. That's not going to serve anybody. So to not have a coach involved in personnel decisions would just be foolish. And I can't imagine there's many clubs out there that take that approach or adopt that approach, but we certainly don't. And that's a key part of this. So Chris and the coaching staff are, massively involved in all the personnel decisions that we have. We had another roster meeting last Thursday. I think we meet every 2 weeks on the roster. But it's led by Chris Cartledge and Fran Taylor's in there, Brian Crookham's in there, our director of scouting, Alex Aldridge, is in there, James Rowling is in there as the assistant director of player personnel, and then Chris Armis and Chris Little from the coaching staff. And we really go through the entire depth chart, and we're talking about academy players as well as second team players as well as first team players, building that out, what it looks like over the remainder of this cycle and into the next cycle even, and then looking at what decisions we're going to have to make at the end of this year and what our targets are, positional profiles, etc., etc. So this isn't something, you don't just reach the end of the season and say, okay, now let's talk about it. We already know what we need for the off season. We already know what's coming up in the middle of the next year. We're working, many windows in advance on this, and obviously making sure there's cohesiveness across the group is critical, because if you don't have that, then, there's going to be, something's going to fall down. Something's going to fall down, and you're not going to be able to build the group that ultimately you want to build.
Do you have a positional white whale for the winter transfer window?
No, there's not just one thing. We know that if we want to get better, that we're going to need to improve in a couple of different areas, but we like the team right now. We think the team right now is in a good spot. Obviously there'll be some players moving on, there'll be some new players coming in, so we've got a clear sense of what we think right now. But again, the focus is on a pretty good team right now, finishing the job over the next 4 games and then doing some damage in the playoffs.
So with Paxton coming in, did that change your trajectory in the winter and significantly? Because he's, as we've talked about a little bit, Georgie and him aren't like for like, right? It's a very different style of player, even though it's a similar role. So that really change what you're looking at, or not that much?
Not massively so. I mean, you're right, and we've obviously talked about that. They're not the exact same type of player. I think Paxton brings a little bit more than Georgie does, because he's able to contribute on both sides of the ball in a way that Georgie just isn't. Georgie's an incredibly silky smooth player, wonderfully talented player. Paxton's got all of that, but his defensive work rate is through the roof. And I think right now, if you look at Paxton and Hafa, I think when it comes to defensive work rate from a 9 and 10 from 2 DPs, I'm not sure there's many in this league that can rival what they do, and their commitment to the team and their willingness to sacrifice for the team. So I think Paxton brings us a little bit more flexibility probably as well. He's equally as comfortable playing a little bit deeper in a 3-man midfield. To be honest with you, I think he could probably play in a double pivot. I think he's just got such a good game awareness, and his mentality is so good, his physicality is good. I think he could do that. It's not necessarily where we would want to put him, but I think the ability to toggle between different formations exists with Paxton, because he is so comfortable in different spots. And I think you can see already he's comfortable dropping deeper, going to try and find the game and to help progress the play as well. So I think he offers us a little bit more flexibility, which we're excited about.
Speaking of playoffs, you've set continuous berths to the playoffs as a barometer for success for the Rapids.
I think perennial playoff team.
Perennial playoff team. That sounds.
I've heard that thrown
better.
back at me a few times.
Perennial playoff team. With 60% of the league making the playoffs, do you think that puts a thumb on the scale of your success threshold? And if so or not, how do we create a team that's getting that home field advantage in the top 4 of the table perennially, since that advantage is so prominent for us here at a Mile High?
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, this is a tough league. This is a hard league, and qualifying for the playoffs is still hard. Like, that is a tough thing to do. So that has to remain the first priority, because you can't win MLS Cup if you're not in the playoffs. But there's no doubt that it's not, by saying that we want to be a perennial playoff team, that's not setting a ceiling on our ambitions. Like, that's not what it is. Obviously, we would like to be top 4. Obviously, you would like to win, right? You'd like to do what we did in 21, where we're finishing top of the conference. But with each position, you're obviously getting an additional benefit, right? That is the way it goes. So the first job is to get into the playoffs. That's your first job every year, get into the playoffs. After that, it's finish top 4. After that, it's win the West, win the Supporter Shield, and then obviously what happens in the playoffs happens then. I am a big believer in that like, we build our teams for the Supporter Shield, right? We build our team for the league season, not for any individual one-off game. That's really important. I get that. MLS Cup is obviously the pinnacle here in the United States, but to build a team, you're building it for the season, and those are different stepping stones. When we were out recently with at an event that Kevin and Josh hosted in LA at the Rams preseason camp. So we had the Avs, the Nuggets, ourselves, and the Rams. A lot of our technical folks coming together to talk about best practices. And Les Snead, who's the GM of the Rams, said that we're trying to do a hard thing together in terms of what they were trying to do, qualify for the playoffs. And I think it's a really, really good way to put it. Like, there's a real togetherness that is needed to achieve something special, to achieve something that is hard. So it kind of starts with that. But as I said, it certainly doesn't limit our ambitions. Our ambitions is to win an MLS Cup. That's what our ambition is. You work backwards from that at the various different stages. But what I do know is you can't win an MLS Cup if you're not in the playoffs. So that's the starting point.
As an end to our interview and as a way to start our next conversation in the offseason, how can the Colorado Rapids, from your perspective, reintroduce themselves next season, their 30th, as a way to establish a stronger identity, more ethos-driven narrative, and community cohesion? So you're fitting in with us a little bit more. Yeah,
I mean, I'll go back to what I said earlier. You know, the active work that we're doing right now in the community to listen to our fans, to engage with our fans, and to get a clear sense and a clear understanding of what they're looking for and what the community and what the market is looking for, so that we can deliver on that. You know, we think we have a good idea, but again, we're not going to stand here and say we know everything. We don't. I think it's really important for us to go out there and listen. We think we've got some really exciting events coming up and programming, and obviously what we're going to do around the World Cup, what we're going to do around our kit launch next year, what we're going to do with the 30th anniversary and everything that goes with that. There is a lot of exciting things coming up, and unfortunately there's not many things I can announce today. That's not the way this goes, but by the time we get to the fan forum in the off season, we are going to have some pretty exciting things to talk about, and our supporters are going to have a lot of exciting things to look forward to next year. And you know, as I said, with the World Cup and with the focus that's going to be on this sport, there's never been a better time for us to reimagine things and position ourselves as what you talked about earlier, which is at the pinnacle of the game here in Colorado on the men's side. Obviously, we've got Denver Summit coming in on the female side, and that's hugely exciting. You know, I think you're going to see a lot of changes, hopefully in the youth space over the next little while as well, and a real move to position Colorado as a state at the very forefront of what I hope is a changing landscape in the country, because the future is incredibly bright here. And I think, you know, as a state, we've got an opportunity to be real leaders there. So I'm incredibly excited about what's to come. So I would say stay tuned. Make sure you're coming to the fan forum. There's going to be a lot of good things to talk about then. And yeah, next year promises to be an incredibly exciting year.
Well, I will say Colorado is the state of soccer. We're going to make sure that that's known, especially next year. And then I did want to give you the chance, since you've been such a good sport for us with putting some of these questions out there, how would you like to see both the media and also the community become more educated and talk about soccer and be better soccer fans?
You've used the word talk. Like, that's it. Like, the more we can talk about soccer, the better it's going to be. And the more people are going to become involved, engaged, active within the soccer community. And that's what we want. Ultimately, for us to all achieve the goals that we have here is we need to grow the sport. We need to grow interest in the sport. We need to grow participation in the sport. And we need that to become a lifelong stickiness that's passed on from generation to generation. And that's one of the key things here. And it's obviously, when you come over from Europe, you know, it's one of the things that is the biggest difference, I would say, is that in Europe, your team is passed on. You know, I support my team because my dad supported my team. And you know, that's a big thing in Europe. And I think when you get to that point here in the United States, that's when this sport truly explodes. When it's passed on from generation to generation, and when grandparent tells parent tells child, and that's a really important piece, because it links people together. It really ties and binds people in a way that is impossible to have in a league that's 30 years old. You know, there are only 4 original teams. There are only 4 original teams that still exist today in the same frame as they did in 1996. That is the Columbus Crew, New England Revolution, LA Galaxy, and the Colorado Rapids. So we are one of only 4 originals. That is something we can be incredibly proud of. That is something we can lean into, and that is something that we can pass on, because there's never going to be a 5th, right? There can't. So there can only ever be 4 of this. And I think that's something that is so important. And the more we talk about it, the more active we are, the more engaged we are in our community, the more we're a representation of our community, the better it's going to be. And that is the key thing, is to make sure, go back to where we started this with we're after the hearts and minds of the kids. This isn't about this generation. This is about the next generation, because that's then when you really start to see a connection and an attachment that will go much, much deeper than anything we can even imagine at this point in time, you know, because you're not following then for something that's, I don't want to say selfish, but that's a kind of an instant gratification in terms of going to a game. It's good, you win, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, I went to a game with my dad. I went to a game with my mom. I went to a game with my grandparent. That tie that brings the community truly together, that's what ultimately is going to help the sport grow here. And again, that comes back to the experience, and it comes back to the engagement and making sure that there's things to talk about, good and bad, right? Because again, hate to say this, but we're going to lose games in the future. That's going to happen. But again, you want people talking about it. You want people engaged with it. And ultimately, because we're going to win a lot of games in the future as well, having that celebration be together and be something that binds a community, that's ultimately going to be the driving force of what's to come in the future. So my advice is come out. We've got 2 home games to go before we hit the playoffs.
2+, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, 2 in the regular season and then the playoffs. But I'd love to see this place packed. I know our players would. Like, we've got a good record here. We had a couple of results earlier on the season that didn't go our way, but we've turned that around. And you saw the place on Saturday night, you know, when that last minute winner goes in. It's absolutely rocking, and there's no better place to be, and that is a place where you can then celebrate together. But that's going to matter. Having a full building, having excitement, having an atmosphere, the fans play a huge part. And again, I don't know if our supporters can truly appreciate how much it means to the players. It's a big deal for them. So that's what we're looking for, is to all be in this together to try and grow the sport and ultimately take it where we want it to go.
I think that's a fantastic place to end. Again, from our part, I do want to thank you and show you that we do appreciate the continued honesty, availability, and trust to join in these narratives with you, and especially the time.
Yeah, no, delighted to do this. It was great. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, again, I just want to thank Pádraig Smith, Gabby, Miles, Taylor, Richard, everyone who was involved in setting this up. We got to go to the stadium, interview Pádraig in the brand cave, sit on those comfy couches. I felt privileged to be in that position, to have that conversation. And I look forward to future conversations with Pádraig down the road.
Completely agree. Again, just seriously, if you ever get a chance, go talk with him. He'll talk with you. He will talk your ear off on stuff. And he actually really does know his stuff. Like, he keeps up a lot of information. He just knows so much things that it's well worth just having a conversation, even if it's not Rapids entirely related. He's just a wealth of knowledge on soccer and the MLS as well. But
plus, Monk, I mean, if he does go off the rails, we have that hour-long video of him trying to do bicycle kicks. We've got that poor egg. Like, we've got a dead drop. If Monk or I disappear, we hit send on that, and everyone gets to see your Marcelo Balboa impression.
Speaking of fantasy, Fitouri, what's going on in fantasy?
Well, we are coming towards the end of the fantasy season, as well as, of course, the end of the MLS season. This week is kind of a funky double game week, and I say funky because if you're listening to this now and you have not set your lineup, you have probably missed it. We had 6 teams playing in double game weeks this week. The first being, and I will give Matt the floor in a second to opine about his feelings on this, but the first being a Tuesday game between Miami and Seattle, a fun little repeat of the past Leagues Cup final that took place last night. And then as we are speaking, NYCFC is kicking off against Columbus Crew. The weirdest part of this double game week will be a doubleheader between Salt Lake and LAFC. They play each other on Wednesday at home and then reverse to go play in LA. But the same 2 teams are playing against each other 3 days apart, which is a wild moment in MLS. So before we talk about, well, Matt, before you lay into me, let's talk about how your last week went, or how everyone's last week went. How was this past week for you all?
Congratulations, Kevin of Kev's Churro Crew. You were a great opponent, and I feel honored that you are the second L that Pit and Play has taken this season. I think when you are a contender such as Pit and Play, it's very easy to lose sight of the game-to-game, week-to-week emotions that is a fantasy soccer season. And Kevin really brought me back to that. And so it was nice to feel vulnerable, to see something different than a W come across the board on Monday morning for once. And I've got Kevin to thank for that. So Kevin, I think obviously congratulations on the win, but I think we both came out of this better players.
And he's canceling his check right now already, Kevin. When you beat him, he doesn't pay you.
No, I just actually told Robert F. Kennedy to go ahead and outlaw churros. Apparently, churros are like as bad as vaccines, so they're gone.
Yeah, unregulated churros are really the number one downfall of MLS fantasy teams.
Yeah.
If we think about it.
My body, my churro. My churro, my choice? I don't know.
Monk and I ran into Kev at the end of the game, and he had not seen the score yet. And the absolute joy on his face when we got to tell him that he was beating you in fantasy, and then watch in real time as he checked the score. We had a very, very vulnerable reaction from Kev. It was fun to see his excitement. And so you should definitely check out our socials to see that. And I also just this is what makes it fun. There are a good number of people in this league still setting their teams, still being competitive every week. And then we get to see each other at Dick's Sporting Goods Park or chat with each other in different spaces. And the competition's really enjoyable. So I'm excited for the end of the season and excited to see how we build on this next year.
Speaking of setting teams, did people set their teams last night on Tuesday, right?
Before we get to that, I want to talk about, being on a podcast together, putting the hours in every week. Like, I feel like it forms an indelible bond between hosts. Almost that like podcasting is thicker than blood. I know Sara has really leaned on me this season to help her out with her fantasy team, both in letting her know when she can and cannot play Messi, because that's important to her, but also when she went on that river excursion because she'd be away from Wi-Fi, having me literally conduct her whole fantasy team for a weekend, hitting all of the roster deadlines, checking all of her players for her. And then most recently, I don't know if you remember from I think 3 podcasts ago, we were at the tailgate, and Sara, panicked as she was, came up to me, her knight in shining armor, and said, Matt, you're so good at this and you're so dependable. Could you please fix my fantasy lineup? I might have eaten some organic foods that have made me not quite lucid enough to do so. And I said, Sarah, I got you. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. What were you gonna bring up, Punk?
I heard that there was supposed to be a lineup set on Tuesday, which isn't normal, right? For us
Wait, no way.
lay people, just usually it's Wednesday. You check on Wednesday and you're like, okay, Wednesday, set your lineup like I do every week, as you all know that I'm very passionate about setting my lineup each week. And so we do that, right?
That can't be true, Monk, because if there was a lineup that needed to be set yesterday, someone would have let us know. Like, that's who we are. No way. Was there, hold on, let me just tell you. There was a game yesterday, and it involved Sarah's favorite team and the poster above her bed, Lionel Messi and Inter Miami.
I'm like a 13-year-old with a Messi poster over.
Monk, did you know about that?
I didn't know about that one, no.
In case this incredibly passive-aggressive attitude is not clear or translating through podcast medium, there was a weird Tuesday game between Miami and Seattle. As I had said earlier, I did not realize it was a part of the fantasy week till I got the Fop Mob notification that lineups had come out. And so I went and checked, and sure enough, it was. Now, I don't think that we need to formally make this a trial, but a little bit of evidence in my defense. I did look at the lineup, and obviously Suarez is out, and Fatmob have Alba playing up top, Alba being one of the starting Miami defenders who is in the game as a defender. And so I sent a message on our Discord channel saying, is Fatmob correct that Alba is playing forward? I know you hate the Flamingos, but... And didn't get a response until the very next day. I thought that hopefully that would be enough indication that there was a new lineup sent out and that Alba was playing out of position, which is a fun little note for folks that when you find a player playing out of position, especially a defender playing up, you would often like to play that person. In this situation, in that game, I did end up getting 14 points from Jordi Alba, who ended up getting a goal. And so out of that Miami game, have 52 points playing Matt this week. And Matt did not set his lineup for that game entirely because I do not care or love or respect him as a friend, apparently.
So, Monk, if your house is ever on fire and Sarah knows, expect a message in Discord. She won't even at you, by the way, just saying that temperature looks high.
Yeah. Are you warm, Monk?
Yeah. Never mind that while all this is going on, certain people are working very hard for this very podcast.
Yeah, Monk, weren't you at the stadium doing an interview for this show, for the community?
Yeah.
Y'all, as much
did
as
someone bail out of that interview so she could set her lineup? Is that why you couldn't make the interview, Sarah?
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to decide whether to start Messi?
Oh, it was no decision. I knew the second I saw him in a double game week in a starting lineup. I will say, as much as I want to cut off the talk shit on Fitouri, I actually think this is probably really popular with our fan base. So go off, kids.
Okay. And another thing.
Even worse, the conspiracy theory has to be there, Matt. You got to think she's playing you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And she bailed on the interview, right?
And she set the league to playoffs.
Okay,
this is soccer.
This was a long time thought out process is really what we're finding out. This is like season in the making. She knew.
Well, to move us on, that is something I do want to update everybody. So how our leagues work is that I want to take a moment to let Matt know that Kev caught the lineup. And so he had the same 3 Miami players I did, because of course he did. He's a thinker. So
of course, you probably texted Kev something other than just like a Rorschach test of a smoke signal.
Okay. Everyone should know that the way that our leagues are set up, we obviously have our points league and then we have our head-to-head league. Our head-to-head league is about to enter playoffs. So the top teams will be bracketed and play through a bracket for the rest of these weeks. So this is the last week that it will count towards your standings in the head-to-head. Now, I will say congratulations, Matt. That means that at this point you will have won or sit at the top of the table on the head-to-head league, because there is no way I can beat you. I will, after beating you this week, be one game behind you. So congratulations. And I truly do mean that, not as somebody who accidentally
Just trying to sabotage him.
I think what Sarah said is, in recompense for her betrayal, I should expect a well-crafted supporter shield from the craftiest person on the PIDCAST.
We're just going to call it the guy who's shield.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, just and I can write in whatever I want. The guy who's pulling the knife out of his back.
I'm looking forward to this week. I really hope that folks jumped in on some of these double game weeks. I know while Matt didn't get into the Miami game, he is likely playing that Salt Lake or NYCFC game players. It's Well, I was just referring to the game, but let me look and see if I have one of them on my roster. Matt and I adamantly disagree here. Yes, I do have Diego Luna on my field.
How are we supposed to coexist with someone so amoral, Monk?
Amoral.
What?
Okay. Trying to sabotage Matt, I'm all for it, right? But Salt Lake players? Draw the line.
We got to put in the graphic. What's the meme from the NFL? It's like, our expectations were low, but holy fuck. Sarah, our expectations were low, but RSL players?
I play to win, Matt. And that includes, unfortunately, playing Messi at times. And that includes when there's only 6 teams on a double game week.
Well, I won the table and I didn't throw my friends under the bus, drive over them, back up, drive over them again, and then start Salt Lake players.
It was
and
like
then put Salt Lake players on the bus?
It was like a trolley problem, but like one way was just like clear road.
There's going to be a Scooby-Doo thing where Sarah pulls off the mask and it's been Pablo Mastroeni the whole time.
I adore you both, and I'm going to force us to move on. Let's quickly look at games this coming week. If anyone has anything that jumps out to them, that are games that they want to watch either for fantasy or just think will be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Monk, I feel like this Inter Miami Seattle Sounders game is going to be big for fantasy.
Me too.
I will say that if folks didn't get to watch it, Sounders got a late goal, but we saw 3-1, which was almost the inverse score of the Leagues Cup final. Miami just stomped Sounders. It was the Miami that we've come to expect. And I mean,
to be fair, Miami is very good when hardware isn't on the line.
Or maybe they just don't need to play Suarez.
They had so much more space to play without that overbite. No, but
spit on the field.
Gosh, okay. I was going to bring us back from a tangent. We talked about how this kerfuffle happened, but we never talked about the fact that Suarez did end up getting a suspension, although only a 3-game suspension. So everyone was like, WTF, that's like a fake suspension. But go ahead.
The WTF part for me was that he was suspended 6 games in Leagues Cup. So MLS looked at what Leagues Cup levied as a fair punishment, and we're like, cut it by half, because like they do pay our bills.
The other thing, though, that was interesting, and do you all know the tea on this, that the Seattle Sounders got penalized for abusing a credential?
I don't know what happened. Do you?
I think it's about that coach or the staffer that Suarez spit on, and he lost his credential. I have no clue.
Said misuse of a credential, I believe, was what they cited to fine Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how they found some way to come down on Seattle on this. Busquets didn't get fined or suspended for throwing punches. Aviles didn't get fined or suspended for, was he putting Paul Rothrock or Obed Vargas in a chokehold? No, I was just saying what a good guy he is. Like,
come here, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you didn't. Okay. I saw that come through. I did some like tertiary searching and I was confused by it. So I guess.
No, I was talking to Braden Nurse about that. That was the same thing. There was a photographer for LA Galaxy who got his credential revoked under the banner of misuse of credential because it was alleged by LA Galaxy that he used his media credential and corresponding bag that he brought in to bring in, I believe, an anti-ice banner. To which I mean, there are two obvious criticisms to this. Like, the bags are checked when you're a credentialed media person coming into a stadium. And second, he did one of those, like, I don't know, the cool clothing or like apparel videos where he shows like every pocket the bag has. And then it's just like, how would a banner fit in this?
So are they saying that the Seattle Sounders staff member brought Suarez's spit into the stadium on his credential? Is that
probably?
Is that how that happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, hot spit is anti-ice, so it might have been for the post-game comments in the tunnel. So people were asking the Seattle coach, and he goes, "I was waiting for the bite." Maybe that's why he got his credential revoked for having the ultimate clapback.
Oh my gosh, have folks seen the jumping rugby women's World Cup is happening right now, and one of the French players bit one of the Irish players. Wait, do I have that backwards? I might have that backwards. But it's caught on video of her biting down in a ruck on this player. She got I believe, 12-game suspension for that. So at least rugby takes their discipline seriously.
She was just wearing her Suarez Halloween costume early. She's method.
I asked my coach back in the day, what were the biggest penalties? Like, what are the ways that you get the biggest fine in rugby? And it's biting and eye gouging. And
I just figured there was a ton of biting in the scrum.
Yeah.
Well, not nibbling, biting. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm curious, like, I would imagine that the same standards are set for soccer and MLS. And I think it's surprising that something that involves body fluids is apparently only a 3-game suspension.
Well, you got to remember Miami and famous player. So like that takes like the valuation is different. Like if that had been, let's say, Navajo, he would have been suspended for all of next season.
It's like evicting the tenants that throw all your parties. You're like, shit, if we get rid of them, like, what are we going to do on Saturday? They've got the pool.
Well, we have effectively walked the fantasy segment into a whole other category. So I think it's a great time for us to move on to our Dallas preview.
I think before the Dallas preview, though, because we did get so off the rails, Sarah, you pointed this out. This is a literal 6-point double game week for LA and Salt Lake that could have huge reverberations to how both teams play us in the final 2 games of the season. Salt Lake's going to play us for the trophy no matter what, but they could be eliminated from the playoffs with these 2 matches. LA could be so far ahead in the playoffs with these 2 matches that it sees decision day, them playing a rotated squad, which I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we're not good when LA teams play rotated squads. But just saying.
Yeah, I think those are both really good flags for the week.
So when you hear this on Friday and you've missed all those double game weeks anyway, at least you were informed at the same pace that Matt and I were.
I don't even want to say it, but another game that is like high on my radar is Miami is playing DC United at home. And we're
moving on to FC Dallas. So this weekend, the Rapids.
You're going to steal my intro too? All right, time for our FC Dallas preview. The Rapids are continuing its Texas tour by taking on Dallas in Dallas this weekend. Just a flag for everyone planning on watching this game. It is Central Time, so Rapids will be playing at 6:30, not 7:30 against Dallas in Dallas. Monk, what are the stats?
Dallas is sitting 11th in the West with 34 points at 8-11-10, 4-8-3 at home. So, we got a good shot. I feel like we have a good shot here. They have 42 goals for and 48 against. So they're doing all right, about even, a little bit under that. They are coming off of a 2-0 win against Austin, and they have not lost since the end of July against NYCFC. So they are on 3 of those games are draws, bookended by 2 wins. But that's solid form, right? This is a team that's kind of on the up and up comparatively. And the Rapids are sitting 8th with 39 points at 11, 13, and 6. We're not great on the road. We're 3-8-4 on the road. We're 40 goals for and 49 against. Again, kind of similar goal lines for both teams. We are coming off of a win, but before that, we had a couple of losses. So I think it's going to be a tough one. But I think we got a good opportunity, especially if we're coming off like the energy that Paxton showed after his goal. Like if we can bring that type of energy, that type of hype into Dallas, we should just be able to dunk on them. But we need that kind of energy to do it.
Yeah, I think going into this match, obviously we want to be a little gun shy on saying the Rapids should handle business because of the past few times we've said the Rapids should handle business. But this really does feel like the Rapids should handle business. Dallas has a game in hand. They played 29 to our 30 games. They currently sit, what is it?
30.
Yeah, so they're only 5 points below us in the table. Theoretically, they beat us this game, they win the next game. Dallas is going to be desperate to stay above the playoff line. Right now they're at 11th, but they could get into the 9th place spot after this weekend. And so you don't ever really want to count out a team with it's back in the corner. I will say that against Dallas, this is like, I don't know what about Rafa Navajo loves scoring against teams in Texas, but I think he's going to put his cowboy hat on and carry the team. We've got Rafa Santos that has had 3 assists in 3 games, and they are ecstatic for the moment they get the Rafa to Rafa goal, which I really think is going to happen in this match. And I think that's just going to open a floodgate of goal scoring. Peter Musa is on fire. Like he's just feels like an unstoppable force that's probably going to get at least 1 on us. But for all intents and purposes, with Connor and Ali kind of solidifying that mid block that we rocked against Houston, with Paxton like just coming into his own as the guy, he's going to be so full to the brim with confidence. Cole too. That goal he scored meant so much to him, and also the play spaces and things he gets to do as a midfielder with Paxton beside him. I think we've seen a better Cole, especially last match. This has got to be a win. I mean, the whole team knows every game's a playoff game and every game needs to be a win now, but I don't know, guys. I can't see a way this one goes upside down.
Yeah, I think that you touched on a lot of what I was initially looking at. To me, this is a team that we cannot treat as an 11th place team. Like you mentioned, that game in hand, and they are only 1 point away from that line, so they're going to be fighting like hell. The other thing is that they actually have a lower point differential than we do. And so this isn't, and it's a team that has found its stride later in the season. So I think they are in good form right now. That being said, like Rapids don't seem to be consistent on who they beat or don't beat. So we can be a Vancouver in form or lose to, an LA Galaxy. So I guess it really doesn't matter how good the team we're playing against is. It matters how we show up. And I'm hoping that the Paxton's on fire after his almost goal, that our new team is starting to connect better, and that we'll see an away squad like we're not used to seeing.
Positive. If we win this game, we'll have tied up the series all time. It's currently,
cool.
or no, we'd be up 1. I'm misreading that. They have 13, 12, and we have 14. So we have an extra game in hand in the all time. It's kind of a rarity because I'm going to be honest, most of the time when I look at that stat, we are down
Well,
when we're playing against people.
Rapids have a weird habit of screwing up Dallas this season. And like, as much as we need this win, Dallas needs this win in order to continue their season. And so I hope that our same little spiteful, ruin other people's day approach, especially that we've historically had against Dallas, will pull through here.
And we can't use Matt's normal magic that we come back off of the earlier game in the season and reverse that because it was a draw. So we drew it in March 1st.
I mean, that just means that we're going to win or lose, that it just won't be the same result. So it won't be a draw.
The opposite of a draw was a draw.
Sarah, are you sitting down? It won't be a draw.
Yeah.
It won't be a amazing, sparkling 1-1 draw.
I feel like you all have cursed it. I feel like we're going to see a fucking draw. You know, honestly, I'm not saying I would be happy with the draw, but I think given our away form, given that we really don't want Dallas with 3 points,
this is a high pressure game. Should we go to score predictions?
What's the song? Have Love Will Travel. Like, we have Paxton. Can we travel now? Yeah, let's do scores.
All right, Matthew, what do you got?
Well, now that Sarah let me know that there's a Rapids game this weekend, I'm going to predict 3-1. I believe the goal scorers are going to be Hafa Navahu, Paxton Aronson, and Calvin Harris. I think the one is going to be Lalas Abubakar. I think he's going to get a late game header.
I am gonna no.
No? He scored a few games ago. He's on the scoreboard in Dallas now.
I think Lawless comes in towards the end of the game, 60th, 70th minute. Rapids kind of step back. They're up 3-0. They get a little loose on set piece defense. Lawless heads one in, and we get that moment where Zach and Lawless just kind of like look at each other and just like, okay.
Oh, you think like it's going to be a showdown, or you think Zach's going to let it happen?
I don't think Zach's going to let it happen. I think Zach's going to smile when he sees it's Lawless that scores, and they're going to give each other like all right, I see you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start my score prediction with next year when we start off this season, I am going to, and I challenge you all to do the same, to actually predict the game as we predict it, not as we hope it to be, because we have not once predicted a loss. Both of your
faces. We're never going to lose.
I predicted 2 losses and both were wins. I said we were going to lose to Charlotte, and I believe I said we were going to lose to San Diego.
I know he had predicted at least one because we gave him a lot of shit for it.
Yeah.
Okay, next season, I think we should be more comfortable predicting losses. I'm not predicting a loss this game. I'm not going to predict a draw because my reputation has already been dragged through this entire episode. This episode is going to be like, Fitouri really needs therapy money.
No, Matt needs therapy money. You beat up Matt.
Victim blaming all the time.
What episode title? Sarah Fitouri Betrayal.
The Betrayal.
No, just call it
episode 1.
We're just going to call it Gone Girl.
The Paxton.
I can already see it now. Gone Girl featuring Pádraig Smith.
Can we possibly make this episode any longer? I don't know what to predict here. I'm going to predict fucking 2-0 Paxton Navajo.
Right? Okay. I'm going to go 3-0. I never predict goals against my man, the Purple King.
Yeah,
Are you predicting him at purple?
You've definitely predicted goals against the...
I predicted goals against...
Nico?
That has to change. We are going to be a serious podcast next year, and we are going to be honest with our predictions.
Then who's going to host
not
it?
how I
it
work.
Can't be the 3 of us.
I don't predict losses. You're just going to have to come to grips with that betrayal.
It's a name now. Have I mentioned I was betrayed?
We could do like I think It's Always Sunny does the episode where Frank just has a whole fake family. And so we'll just start off next season with 3 fake hosts still pretending to be us. And they're just like super analytical, like really earnest about their predictions.
What we'll do is we'll just have like a ghost thing that's just like ask Chat GPT what the score predictions are, and we'll be like, okay, that's our loss prediction, and then we'll predict the wins. But I'm going to say that Pax gets 2.
Ooh.
And Navajo gets the 3rd one.
Really? Okay.
I think that own goal that should have been given to him is gonna ramp him up even more, and he's gonna be like, I'm gonna prove to you I can score goals in the burgundy and blue.
All right.
Well, let's go to Dallas. Let's get those 3 points. Let's
Up the
live the
Pids.
podcast another day. Monk, where can they find you?
Nowhere. No, I don't want to be found anymore.
Nowhere. No.
Don't find me.
Don't find me. You already gave away my secret location where I sit. So
I love that. Monk, where can we find you? No.
no, just no.
No.
Don't want to tell you because I don't want a knife in the back as well. I mean, Burgundy Sky.
You just got betrayed.
What about you, Fitouri?
You can find me at the Fitouri on socials or setting my lineup on a Tuesday night. Matt, where can they find you?
I mean, in therapy, obviously, trying to figure out how I can trust my friends anymore.
And
Yeah. So that's going to take a lot of yacht money out of the bank account. They can find me on Blue Sky asking for help on how I can trust my friends anymore. At Matthew Wick. You can find me probably just wandering around Denver, not knowing what to do with myself because my compass, my North Star, my paragon of virtue that was Sarah Fitouri has stuck the knife in and twisted it.
If you've also been betrayed, let us know.
I'm calling
Okay.
the strong arm. Yeah. I'm going to go outside right now and look for a billboard to get Frank Azar's number, and I'm calling the strong arm on you.
so anyways, you can also find us always jamming out to Don Chicharron, our favorite local chicha brand.
Not you. I just got off the phone with them. Aldo said, do not come to his show, girl. Yeah. He said, Don Chicha, no.
I'm trying to move us along here. Their song Especial is our intro music. Make sure to check them out. Up the Pids.
Up the pit.
Kids. Can't believe that betrayal.
Tú tienes esa cosa especial, bella mariposa especial, ella con su bota